Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to show you how to slim the sleeve of a dress shirt. Everything done by hand. This is not my best recording. You'll see I'm saying one thing and I'll do something else. Like, I am not going to sew all of this, I'm just going to show you parts of it, and then I went ahead and just sewed all of it. I was being lazy because I have a lot of work to do, but then I decided to just go ahead and do it because I don't want to have any regrets. So I hope you guys like this video. The original subscriber that requested this was NB, and they said that their sleeve was way too big. So in this video, I actually took the pleats out of the shirt sleeve. You don't have to do that, but because they mentioned that it was just so big, I went ahead and took it out so that you could see how it's done, and it is possible. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, to begin this alteration, if you have a flat felled seam like this, I'm going to link a video up above in the cards that you need to watch, because if you are taking the sleeve in and you're having to taper back out to the flat felled seam, then you'll need to watch that video to show how you blend it, because I'm not doing it in this video. This one, I am going to show you how to take up the width of this, and in doing that, I'm going to take out the pleats. If they're too big, you don't really need pleats anyway. So I'm going to show you how to take that in, and then how to sew this by hand. My hand sewing is not beautiful. I know how to do the stitches. I've never actually sewn these on by hand, but if I were to do it by hand, this is how I would do it. The first thing you need to do is remove your cuff. And you'll need to be careful so that you don't tear or cut your shirt. If you need to shorten the shirt, this would be a good time to do it. And I will link a video on how to shorten it in the cards above and in the description box. And you'll just do everything but by hand if you don't have a sewing machine. Okay. So that's done. Now, oh, look at, you can see how it was cut. I guess it wasn't really straight. You can go ahead, if yours ends up like that, you can straighten it up if you want. And then there are the pleats. I would take this to the ironing board and press that out really good, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay. I pressed out my shirt. Now, if you have pinned your shirt, then you are going to kind of straighten it up and chalk mark where your pins are. At the cuff, you will need to align this top fold with the fold of your cuff. So you know what, let's button it up just to make sure there's no shifting. And this is if you want to take the cuffs out, the pleats out, because if your shirt's too big already, you don't need pleats in it. So I'm going to align this fold up here with that curve there. And then here you can see where the end of the cuff meets here. And we'll chalk it. Now, if you want to take up part of the sleeve or all of the sleeve, it's up to you. I would imagine that if the sleeves are too big, it might be too big here as well, but you can take it down as far as you want. Make sure that your armhole seams match up front and back, and you can pin that in place if you plan to take it further down into the body. And if you do, take your chalk line here and you can just follow it all the way down. Now I'm doing it like this in case you want to do the flat felled seam. If you don't want to do a flat felled seam, you'll flip it inside out, mark it, and then we can do it that way. So on right here, I'm going to do the flat felled seam, and I will start sewing by hand here and then show you when I'm done, and then I will show you how to do the flat felled part afterwards. For this part, I'm going to use some hand sewing thread, and it's waxed. And I recommend this because when you're hand sewing, oftentimes your thread will curl and loop and end up tangling. But when you have waxed thread, it cuts down on that. And these are in a good cut in the proper length to minimize all that tangling. So which means, depending on how much you have to do, you might have to, end your thread, rethread your needle, and then start up again or whatever. But it is a small price to pay to avoid all the tangles and all the mess. So this is what we're going to start with. Now, if you would like, you can either do a line like this, and in order to make your stitches even, you can use your ruler and mark out every 1/8 of an inch. Now, because this fabric is actually like little squares, I can use that as a guide, or just eyeball it and make them as even as you can. So I'm going to start at the end from the underside. And again, like I said, my sewing is not real straight, but you'll get the idea, and the more you do it, the better you'll get, and the straighter your line will be. So I did not tie a knot in mine because I don't use knots generally. Sometimes I'll finish with a knot, but I generally don't start with one. So you have it started. If you want to knot it, you can go ahead and knot it and come back up again. And then this time you're going to move ahead of where your thread came out the first time. I'm trying to align that loop up right. Okay. When you go back down into the fabric, you go at the end of that first stitch. So you're going backwards. This is called a back stitch. And then when you come up on the other side of that thread. Now, you can pull it, a little snug, but don't pull real hard because you don't want there to be any puckers in your stitching, in your clothing. So come up beyond the thread where it came up before. Go down where the last stitch ended. And this is a nice strong stitch. Looks like I made that one a little too long. But you get the idea. So I am going to turn off my camera, finish this, and I'll meet you back here when I'm done. Okay, this is my stitching line. Not perfect, but it is strong. Now, because this is a flat felled seam, I'm going to redo it like a flat felled seam. So this original seam here is roughly 1/4, maybe a little less, but not quite as small as an 1/8. So I am going to, let me see, I'm going to cut this at 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut both layers at 1/2 inch. You know, let me get my ruler, it'll be easier. So I am not going to do all the sewing all the way down. I'm just going to show you basically how it's done. And then you can finish it up on your own. So I'm going to cut on the line, cut both layers. Again, if you want to know how to blend it back into the original seam, check the video that I'm going to put in the card, and I will probably put it in the description box below. Now here, trim that up. On this side, which is the back side, because you want, let me explain this. This is the front of the shirt. You want your flat felled seam to fold to the back, like this right here. You can see that's folded to the back. So I'm going to flip it over so the back is facing up. Now the top, just the top layer of this seam allowance, I'm going to trim down. And from here you fold it down and take it to the ironing board and fold this and press it down all the way down. I am just going to anchor this to the fold. Okay, so you have your anchor stitch here. You want to go in, I'm just going to take it one more time, go in past this thread here. Then you're going to come back to where this stitch ended. Go in and come up beyond that thread. This is a back stitch because you keep going back. Now, before you start sewing anything, be sure to button up your cuff and make sure that they are aligned equally. They meet up here so that you're not going to have any bulges in this area. So again, this might be a little tough because you're going through so many layers. You're going to have to make sure that you get the other side caught up in your stitches. So please be careful. That would be a bummer if you did all of this and didn't catch the back side. Or if you did, you could always go back over the back side and do a whip stitch. Because there's so many layers that you're dealing with, you may not be able to go through all at one time. You may have to just go up through the fabric, down through the fabric in two separate moves like this. And I'm really glad you guys asked me to do this video because I'm making my son-in-law a shirt. And I think it would be really neat to do some of it by hand. I may not do it by hand, but it would be really cool. I know that at least my daughter appreciates handmade things. So keep your fingers underneath. Make sure you're coming up, going through the cuff. Yep. I'm thinking if you go through like we did before, the whole one motion in and out, because there's so many layers, it's going to cause puckering. I mean, try it if you want to, but it just makes sense in my head that it would probably cause puckering. And if you're horrified at my stitches because they're uneven and my line is crooked, then I recommend that you practice before you actually work on a shirt. Or maybe you just have that gift of being able to get something right the first time.